Hello Ascension Seekers, thank you for joining us on this fundamental journey of ascension. Moore Ascension is presenting alternatives for a metaphysical understanding of the self. In the last Who Are You video, we revealed the known and not too far out there unconventional methods of chakras, astrology, numerology, and heredity to partially define the architecture of the person, and we learned a lot. In this video, we'll define the not too far out there and the far out there unconventional methods of metaphysics, healers, Kabbalah, the tree of life, and names to define the architecture of the person. HBP. No one wants to be accused of being hypnotized or brainwashed or programmed, let alone all three. But we all are, to some degree. But isn't it becoming more obvious that things need to change? So please like and share with someone you feel might have HBP, hypnotized, brainwashed, programming. High praise to any inner work you've done to know who and what you are by any method. What is your state of consciousness? Are you awake, woke, asleep, zombie, or entertained? Unconventional methods. Some of the methods we'll review have been determined to be taboo or occult, which only means hidden. These methods are more metaphysically and spiritually based and can be used to awaken yourself. By the way, have you thought about the question I posed in the last video? What or who went to sleep, if any sleeping took place at all? Or were we ever truly awakening at this level until now for some reason? Also, the only person that can awaken you is you. As we review these unconventional methods, ask yourself, does it stand to reason you could determine who you are partially using any of the unconventional methods we'll review in this video? And some of your higher chakras will definitely need to be open or at least cracked. And by the way, your chakras can be open without having to focus on them, chant, or meditate, or really even know about them. They can be open just based on how you live and act. The not too far out there ones. Metaphysics and metaphysicians. Many people are extremely inquisitive, way beyond schooling, and some of these people decide to study metaphysics and some become metaphysicians. Public Broadcasting Services PBF's website states, quote, derived from the Greek meta to physica, meaning, quote, after the things of nature, unquote, referring to an idea, doctrine, or positive reality outside of human perception. In modern philosophical terminology, metaphysics refers to the studies of what cannot be reached through objective studies of material reality. Areas of metaphysical studies include ontology, cosmology, and often epistemology, unquote. So let me define these quickly. Ontology, Google Oxford, is one, the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being. 2, a set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows their properties and the relations between them. Cosmology by Google Oxford is the science of the origin and development of the universe. Modern astronomy is dominated by the Big Bang Theory, which brings together observational astronomy and particle physics. Epistemology is the philosophical study of the nature, origin, and limits of human knowledge. The longer definition of metaphysical. Metaphysics is a type of philosophy or study that uses broad concepts to help define reality and our understanding of it. Metaphysical studies generally seek to explain inherent or universal elements of reality which are not easily discovered or experienced in our everyday life. As such, it is concerned with explaining the features of reality that exist beyond the physical world and our immediate senses. Metaphysics therefore uses logic based on the meaning of human terms rather than on logic tied to human sense perception of the objective world. Metaphysics might include the study of the nature of the human mind, the definition and meaning of existence, or the nature of space, time, and or causality. In the 1980s, when I got my initial metaphysical training from my metaphysics teacher, Dr. Delbert Blair, we had many esoteric topics to learn to earn a certificate that I proudly have as my banner on this Moore Ascension channel. The list of these topics were many, and here I highlight just some of the topics we covered. The science of breath, vibrations, organics versus inorganics, the human brain, water, the human aura, techniques of meditation, what and where is heaven, what and where is hell, astrology, reincarnation, magic, healing, and mental consciousness. And there are more topics now, and there is much more information that's more broadly available. A metaphysician is a person who gains esoteric knowledge and utilizes it in everyday life. Google Oxford's definition of esoteric is something, quote, intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with a specialized knowledge or interest, unquote. To be a metaphysician, one does not have to be a psychic or medium, both of which we'll discuss in the next video. Metaphysics is about seeking the understanding outside of the established order or established knowledge and validating or challenging what is currently, quote-unquote, known. In the area of plants, a metaphysician would know and utilize the understanding that plants and all living things have intelligence and feeling and utilize that information accordingly, like to talk to plants, to help them grow. So could you be a metaphysician after all? Healers. Did you know that some people consider or should consider themselves to be healers? In America today, most would usually think of healers as someone who would not use any type of traditional Western allopathic medicine, but would use homeopathic, natural, or what would be considered as a supernatural force to bring health to a person who has been ill for some time. Merriam-Webster's definition of healer is, quote, one that heals, unquote. ScienceDirect.com states, quote, spiritual healing can be defined as the direct interaction between one individual, the healer, and a second individual, the sick, with the intention of bringing about an improvement in the illness. In Luke 6:19, the Bible, speaking of Jesus, states, quote, and the people all tried to touch him because power was coming from him and healing them all, unquote. In the chapter, The Healing Principle, of author Richard Lynch's book, quote, Know Thyself, unquote, while discussing health, Richard Lynch opens stating, quote, it is not exaggeration to say that health is the most valuable thing we have and that we should use every effort to understand and demonstrate it. He goes on to say, as we are living in an age of practical ideas, it is no wonder that the Christian religion has been challenged regarding the subject of healing. It states later, one of the most perplexing of its problems, if not the most so, is that of ill health, and the Christian world is rallying as never before to the subject of healing. The founder of Christianity has always been called the Great Physician, but the true significance of this title has been lost in the maze of dogma and ecclesiasticism. Although 24 of the 33 miracles related as performed by the Nazarene were instances of the restoration of the sick to health, and although his instructions to his disciples were to preach and heal, with the passing of time, the healing became separated from the preaching. In fact, they grew so far apart that the very mention of healing in connection with religion is a declaration of fanaticism. Healing, insofar as its relation to Christianity was concerned, became a lost art. Thus, the healing of disease became ineffectual because of the loss of vision and of faith in the healing power, unquote. Jesus was a healer and is a healer if you have enough vision and faith. And Jesus acted just as the spiritualist healer does today. It is known that the healer is not the one doing the healing, but only putting the ill person in an environment or state where they can, quote, heal thyself through God the Creator. And more than illness of the body can be healed by a healer. You may know people that can mediate between two or more people with strongly held beliefs and can bring them into compromise, thus healing the situation. I believe they are healers too. Donna Eden, author of the book Energy Medicine with David Feinstein, states that she is ambivalent about the word healer because it implies someone else holding power over the other, separating the healer from the healed. She likens healing more as administering to the mind, body, spirit. Healing energies are embedded in your tissues, and healing abilities are coded in your psyche through ancestral DNA. Our ancestors lived and moved in hostile environments and had to utilize these passed on skills to survive. Many of these challenges are no longer present and our sensitivities have receded, but we can reactivate these skills if it is our intention. Donna Eden's book, Energy Medicine, can teach you how to reactivate these skills. And of course, there's a test for this, actually a couple of them, but I reference one. They enable you to determine whether you are meant to be a healer. But there are those of you who already know. And the test can be found at discoverhealing.com/ are you meant to be a healer? So take this test to find out. And here is the link. By the way, based on the raw material, Americans will be experiencing more cancer challenges in the future based on the volumes of the emotion of anger we are experiencing in the country now. Please don't partake in these emotions. And there is more to explain why this will be happening in a video coming soon, but here's a bit of it for review. In the Law of One, the Raw Material, Book 2, page 82, or Session 40 of the LL Research YouTube channel, hear the following channel dialogue. Questioner: you mentioned that the thoughts of anger now are causing cancer. Can you expand on this mechanism as it acts as a catalyst or its complete purpose? Ra: I am Ra. The fourth density is one of revealed information. Cells are not hidden to self or other cells. The imbalances or distortions which are of destructive nature show. Therefore, in more obvious ways, the vehicle of the mind-body-spirit complex, thus acting as a teaching resource for self-revelation. The illnesses, such as cancer, are correspondingly very amenable to self-healing once the mechanism of the destructive influence has been grasped by the individual. Questioner: then you are saying that cancer is quite easily healed mentally and is a good teaching tool because it is easily healed mentally, and once the entity forgives the other self at whom he is angry, the cancer will disappear. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is partially correct. The other portion of healing has to do with forgiveness of self and a greatly heightened respect for the self. This may conveniently be expressed by taking care in dietary matters. This is quite frequently a part of the healing and forgiving process. Your basic premise is correct. That's the end of the dialogue. Have you ever healed yourself or anyone else, like your children? Sure you have. We'll definitely revisit healing in the future. This was a little focus on the healer, the far out there ones. In response to the question, quote, is there, in Ra's opinion, any present-day value for the use of the tarot as an aid in the evolutionary process? Ra's answer: I am Ra. You have three basic choices. You may use astrology, the 12 signs, as you call these portions of your planet's energy web, and what has been called the 10 planets. You may choose the tarot with its 22 so-called major arcana. You may choose a study of the so-called Tree of Life with its 10 Sephiroth and the 22 relationship between the stations, unquote. We've done a high-level review of astrology, and the tarot will be reviewed in our last Who Are You video. So, Kabbalah, or the Tree of Life. Let's review the Tree of Life or Kabbalah for the next method. Kabbalah is another seemingly New Age methodology that has been around for 2,000 plus years. Kabbalah is also called the Tree of Life. Kabbalah is a part of Jewish mysticism. And I'm really interested to dive a lot more into Kabbalah. Recently, Kabbalah has been made more available to a broader community for review and analysis. In Will Parfit's book, quote, The Complete Guide to the Kabbalah, unquote, the correlation is made between the 10 Sephiroth and the 7 major chakras we discussed in earlier videos on the architecture of the human and the architecture of the person. The Kabbalah is presented as a map of the human soul and the universe. I also recommend Yehuda Berg's book, quote, The Power of Kabbalah, unquote, to see the outcomes of using Kabbalah to find out who you are. It states, quote, the purpose of this map is to help us sort out different aspects of our psyches and more clearly be able to work with heart energy rather than just intellect, unquote. One can utilize the Kabbalah to find their primary influences to the ways or rays to spiritual realization by way of your soul and personality. The Tree of Life is represented by 10 Sephiroth that represent the various levels of our existence and relate how to navigate them. The Sephiroth encompasses the law of gender, as they are all both masculine sending and feminine receiving. One organization's description of the Sephiroth are as follows. I'll use their sequencing going from 10th or lowest Sephiroth to the first or highest Sephiroth. So I'll give the Sephiroth the station, the name, the description, and the level of the person at the station. 10. Malkuth, initiation of earth, the neophyte. 987, Yesod Had Netach, initiation of water, air, and fire, intermediate grades. 6. Tiferet, initiation into adepthood, the adept. 5-4, Gabora, Chesed, deepening the initiation, the higher adept. Dwath, connecting soul to spirit, babe of the abyss. 3. Binah, connecting to universal love, master of the temple. 2. Chakma, connecting to universal will, the magus. 1. Kether, being one's very own self, ipsissimus. In Will Parfit's book, he discussed the structure of the Tree of Life and that there are 3 pillars that can be perceived when viewing the Tree of Life. There is what is called the right-hand pillar, the left-hand pillar, and the middle pillar. These also relate to the various sides of the brain and opposite control of the body. There are 7 planes roughly equal to the 7 major chakras. There are 3 triangles that have relevance and they inform navigating the Tree of Life. There are 22 paths that one can navigate the Tree of Life to reach various levels of spirituality. These 22 paths, it is stated, admirably support the 22 trumps of the tarot, though there are differences in interpretations of these paths. Much of the Kabbalah also aligns well to the law of one and the Hermetic and universal laws. Like all tools, the Tree of Life can be used for positive or negative polarization. Please use it for positive. Names. Names, the meaning of names. Yes, like in your name. Interestingly, Kabbalah can also enable one to mine pretty interesting information about one's name and the names of things. Though there is a big debate about the origins of language, certain sounds and their accompanying facial expressions can provide enough information to discern levels of polarity in a name. In Roy Feinson's book, The Secret Universe of Names, the dynamic interplay of names and destiny, In the preface, Feinstein, quote, proposes the idea that words evolve into our language and culture because the very sounds in these words evoke a particular emotional resonance in humans, and that in addition, the very pronunciation of these words require a specific distortion of the speaker's face which reinforces the emotional response of the listener. Since these visceral reactions stem from the deeply embedded reptilian hardwiring of the human brain, this book further suggests that reactions to these sounds of our own names can affect our self-image and the expectations others have of us, unquote. Also, in the introduction, the book aligns the methods of name analysis to the Kabbalah. It states, quote, a group calling themselves Kabbalian philosophers, using principles drawn from the ancient Hebrew scripts of the Kabbalah, believe that the forces in our names can be discerned from the numerical formula of the letters in each name. This mathematical principle is supposed to embody the, quote, 9 basic forces of conscious intelligence, unquote, that hold sway over our faith, unquote. And I have to do a bit more research on these 9 forces of conscious intelligence. There are a lot of 9 forces around, believe me. And letters have meaning and power. Name groupings are given a series of ratings. The ratings are charisma, career success, love and friendship, and power. The initial letter carries the higher weight in the measurement. Each measurement rating is described and defined in the book, and it's all math like numerology and other occult or hidden methods. But why have they been hidden? As an example of the meaning of these names, here are some first letters and the meanings for people whose names begin with these letters. And I won't speak these, I'll just let you review them. All letters have their meanings. These letters, when put together to make names, have greater and deeper meaning. A name can convey the personality of a person, just as a language can communicate the personality of a culture. Take French and German as examples. Also mentioned in the book are studies by the University of Chicago and MIT that show that, quote, your name can have a substantial effect on your life, unquote. The book also discussed European-sounding names compared to African-sounding names in the broader community's cultural biases during hiring processes. Many actors change their names to take stage names and also craft them as anagrams. An anagram is created by rearranging the letters of words to form another word using each letter only once. An example is Clint Eastwood's anagram, Old West Action. I assure you, the most powerful people and companies know this information, shouldn't you? Do you know your name has meaning? Do you know what your name means? The book states that in 1972, Esso Oil Corporation spent more than $100 million to change its name to Exxon. And yes, contemporary names can also have their meanings determined as they utilize the same sounds and expression. My name Bryan means strong, and my middle name Anthony means one worthy of praise. But relax, it is not my definition, nor did I do the naming. And I thought Moore just meant, well, more of the same, but I looked again and it relates to the MR sound and names, which I'll summarize as the R symbolizing romantic and the M symbolizes merciful and maternal. Though it also states a lot of that has been beaten out of me by now. Though I do keep some in reserve if ever needed, as I still have my rosy idea of reality, which I can have if I work at it hard enough. I'm not sure my parents knew these meanings, but I know the meanings of the names of all my children as I gave them most of them, and they all know the meanings of their names or they paid dearly as children. And my children do seem to act out their names, as I also believe I do. Does it stand to reason you could determine who you are partially using any of these methods? Any of these methods can help one attain more light and more information about oneself. If people are having this much trouble with people being woke, what will they do when more people are awake? If you know a person with HBP, hypnotized, brainwashed programming, or just hypnotized, or just brainwashed, or just programmed. There's no pill for it. All you can do is call your consciousness and do the spiritual work necessary to wake up and destroy the HBP so that you may accelerate your journey of ascension. The universe rewards action. It's a universal law, the law of action. It states action begets action. So I restated here the ascension sizes if you feel they'll be of any help. Stay tuned for the last video with the too far out there unconventional methods to define the architecture of the person. We are Moore Ascension. Thank you.